Paragraph 8, of course, is probably going to maintain most of the topic of this class today, right? Because paragraph 8 is compensation. The first part is fairly easy to get through. It's the retainer fee. Most people don't charge a retainer fee, but you are or can charge a retainer fee. And that retainer fee would be deposited with Samson just like earnest money deposit. And then that money would get funneled to you, just kind of pass through, right? And then it either will or will not be subtracted from any compensation that's due via this brokerage agreement. So once again, I'll use the same thing for termination. If you're going to charge a retainer fee, charge all of your buyers a retainer fee, just like termination fee. I wouldn't pick and choose. Why? Because if you pick and choose who you're going to do this stuff with, there's a potential fair housing issue, right? So you charge all a certain class a retainer fee, or you charge all, people could look at that as a potential fair housing issue. So you want to make sure that you do it across the board. Paragraph B, this is the broker fee. So you can either fill it out one of two ways, either with a percentage or a dollar amount. So you're going to check that box and you're going to say, buyer will pay compensation the amount of X percent, or a fee, 10,000, 5,000, 20,000, whatever number you put in there, right? Now we like to put in as per MRIS. We like to put 0. We like to put NA. We like to leave blank. I would highly recommend, since September of last year, and all the things that are going on behind the scenes regarding buyer agency compensation, that you let your buyer know your value and get paid accordingly. So and that can vary, right? If I'm out showing a $300,000 condo and I'm going to show a bunch of $300,000 condos, I may charge 2% minimum. If I'm out showing $1 million properties, I may decide that 1% might be okay, or a flat fee might be okay, depending on the level of effort and work that I'm going to have to put in. So I may decide, based on the buyer itself, what level of compensation that I think I need in order to get this through to the finish line. So you can do that as well, right? Or you should do that as well. And that's really via a conversation between you and the buyer. People will say all the time, well, Steve, if I put 2% in there, or 1%, and the MLS says 2%, what do I do with that last percent? Who gets that? Well, I always say, read the rest of the paragraph, right? I don't know, are people old enough here to remember Paul Harvey? He used to have a radio show, right? And he'd tell this story, elaborate story. And then he would stop it in the middle. And then they'd go to commercial, and then they'd come back. And then later on, he would tell the rest. And then at the end, now you know the rest of the story, right? So it says here in the brokerage agreement, if broker receives any compensation from the seller or seller's representative for services covered by the agreement, that amount will be credited towards the buyer's obligation to pay the brokerage fee. Broker may retain any additional compensation offered by the seller or seller's representative if this causes the compensation paid to the broker to exceed the fee specified above. So that gives you great latitude as a buyer's agent to either accept the additional compensation and move on, to pay for home inspection repairs for my buyer if I choose to do so, because instead of making 2%, I'm making 3%. I have a whole extra percent to play with. I could do numerous things if I wanted to with the extra compensation. Or I could take it and go to the Bahamas. You choose, right? So it's imperative that you make sure that you put something in here. So now what happens if I put 2% in here and the MRIS says 1%? Well, I can accept the 1% if I want, or I can ask the buyer to pay me the additional 1%. It's up to you. right? It's your business, it's your money, you know, you can ask the buyer. Now, there's certain loan programs that won't allow that. VA won't allow the buyer to pay anything in the Alta, but you can ask your buyer to pay any difference.
Thank you.
All right, continuing on with this compensation paragraph. The broker fee will also be earned, due, and payable by the buyer under either of the following circumstances. If within X amount of days after expiration of the buyer early termination of agreement, buyer enters into a contract to acquire real property of the type discussed in the purpose paragraph, unless buyer has entered into a subsequent buyer-broker agreement with another company. So that kind of saves you if they found a property and then they try and go in unrepresented. You're protected for up to whatever amount of time, 30 days, 30, 60 days, whatever you put in there. If having entered into an enforceable contract to acquire real property during the term of the agreement, buyer defaults. So if the buyer enters into an agreement, ends up defaulting, you could be due a compensation. The next one is paragraph. So, and then I guess one of the main things they did in here, right, the broker's compensation and the sharing of compensation between brokers are fully negotiable and are not fixed, controlled, recommended, or suggested by law of any or MLS or Association of Realtors. So they added that in, right? So just be aware of that. Paragraph C is the broker service fee. This is where you should put the $345 fee. Please don't put your team fees in here. This is where you should put only the $345 fee, okay? If you have a team fee or if you have other fees that you're charging the buyer, you can put them in either the other terms at the end or you can write them in. I've seen them written in under paragraph B, which would say instead of the percentage, you could write in or whatever you're charging plus $550 admin fee, or $550 team fee, or whatever fee it is that you want. My recommendation is you put it in the other terms paragraph. It makes it cleaner. But some people put it in under the brokerage fee. You just can't add it in to the Samson brokerage fee, right? Because Samson charges the $345 fee to everybody. So if I'm a buyer and I get your buyer agency agreement and yours is $345, and then I get your agency agreement and it's $495, and I get your agreement over there and it's $695, and your buyer somehow says, well, I was talking to Cece and she says this Samson fee is $345. And you say, well, it is $345 plus I charge a transaction fee of X amount of dollars, it's just added in there. You have to separate it out. Company policy says you can't pad the fee unless you disclose what that fee is for. Okay?